Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Screaming into the Void. I'm your host, Noah. I have today here with me Joseph.
Yeah, this is Hi.
Today, we're going to be breaking down The Phantom Menace, the first episode in our Star Wars movie breakdown. We're going to be watching it in chunks of 45 minutes. So we're going to watch, we'll come back here, we'll talk for 10-15 minutes or so about what we thought was good, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we thought worked, and then we'll go back and we'll watch the next chunk of the film. And we're going to break down all of it. We have here the 2001 cut of the film, and so that's what we're going to be breaking down today. So we're going to stand up and we're going to go over to the other room and watch the first chunk of the film, and we'll see you in just a moment. Okay, so we're back, and what did we see happen? So, a little bit of backstory. The opening crawl, with the classic Star Wars score, which I think, personally, I like the crawl. I think it's a good way of getting all of the really backstory-heavy stuff just across,
Could we have seen it? What exactly was in it that needed to be just stated and not necessarily seen?
None of it, but everything that was in the opening crawl would have had to be stated over the course of like half an hour.
I was say because it was kind of abstract and broad because it was just sort of setting up
the Trade Federation has some problems,
or the recent it's current events. It's the newspaper.
Trade Federation's a problem. They're blockading Naboo, and the Council has sent 2 Jedi to stop it.
Did we get, speaking of newspapers, did we ever get a perspective on like the man on the ground and what he thought of the
Nope.
Nobody really said
No, it's taken relatively for granted that Trade Federation are evil. Granted, they do a lot of evil shit pretty much over the course of this film. So
what have we seen so far? They declare war on an entire race of peoples which exist, saying that the Gungans are hidden people and people don't readily know that they exist. Then they have basically occupied an entire planet.
Yep.
They have invaded them at the behest
of Darth Sidious.
They're sort of in league with him.
He's
promising
Emperor
them something.
Palpatine in disguise, but
we don't know that in the film yet. Yeah. And he's not Emperor yet. He's literally is he just the representative? He's just the Senate. I believe
he's still just the senator. But in the film, he talks
for Naboo. Yeah, for Naboo.
He's senator for Naboo.
He's like, hey, invade my home planet.
Yep.
Invade the people I represent.
Because it gets him victim bucks, and those victim bucks let him leverage himself into the position of Chancellor in
victim bias or something. He wants the.
It looks good that his planet's been the victim of the Trade Federation because he has the most reason to want to stop the CIS, the Confederacy of Independent States, I believe.
Shit.
It's what the Trade Federation becomes basically. I don't actually remember what the acronym stands for, but basically, I like Darth Sidious's role in this. Actually, he comes across as very intimidating, and if you know a little bit of what happens later on, the fact that he refers, sort of in third person to the Council is very good. It keeps the twist alive, and he comes across as incredibly intimidating.
Nobody wants to know. They didn't even.
They didn't even have to set him up. Just his voice and his posture come across as very threatening.
It's what it is. It's not that because that wouldn't matter because that could be played off comedic. It's the way people react to it.
Yes.
It's that everybody's terrified of him. Well, and the people he's dealing with, the two
Nemodians, I believe.
Which I don't think that's even stated what they're called in the film.
Nope. I get their
Trade Federation representatives
from the Star Wars Edge of the Empire core book.
Is it not like Wikipedia? Wikipedia?
It's like the Wikipedia entry, basically. The CGI on the droids is dumb in the opening.
Is it dumb? I think all the CGI I've seen so far is... I recently rewatched Hellboy, and all the practical effects look great, but I can tell every time they're using CGI, and I feel like I'm getting that same vibe here, which I don't remember that being the problem... 5 years ago?
I first noticed it, by the way. I first noticed it as they're coming out of the is it called?
The T-chamber room?
Yeah. The room they get gassed in, because they arrive at the Trade Federation to speak and negotiate a ceasing of this blockade, and they get gassed. And as they're coming out, there's some droids there who are trying to shoot them, and the fight is at least cool. I actually like the way that lightsabers are portrayed in this. There's a very sort of dynamicism to them that is missing in some of the later films. Earlier films, but episode 4, 5, 6.
Maybe it's been a long day at work, but like it just didn't impact me much at all. Like it was just sort of stuff happening on screen. But again, it could be circumstantial.
A pair of droidicas show up, who are big, tough fighter dudes. They have
destroyer droids?
Yep, the destroyer droids, which the Nemodians refer to them as droidicas.
That could be local
they appear,
dialect.
And there's a really bad cut immediately afterwards because we cut from them turning left. They like rush off the right side of the screen, and the cut is looking down the hallway, and we see them at the other end of the hallway, and it looks like they teleported.
Yep.
Then we get a little bit of sort of exposition on Naboo about why they're in such trouble from this blockade, and it's because they don't have an army. They just have basically a police force.
Right.
Because the head of security goes over, he's like, hey, if these guys invade, we're going to get completely destroyed.
I want to talk about our villains for a second.
Okay.
So far, we're going to probably talk about our protagonist here in a bit.
Yep.
As far as I can tell, it's leaning on Qui-Gon Jinn, but I would say Obi-Wan's a second main.
Yes.
Easily, and then everyone else is subsequential.
Yep.
Those two are our leads. Our villains, they want to push us to Dark Sidious, but it seems like it actually is the two.
Yeah.
Is the two? Which one of them just gets basically kicked out of the scene? Like he's like, I don't want to see this guy. The Darth Sidious says to, I don't want to see this guy in my face ever again. And it still seems like they're palling around. So they're our villains.
Yep.
They are. What is their motivation here? Why do they want
money?
Is that stated? Do they?
Yeah, that's they're the leaders of they're some higher up in the Trade Federation.
Or is it like the resource? Why are they controlling the trade blockade over this particular planet? We all know that Darth Sidious is pushing this for his own agenda.
Yeah. Their stated goal, as far as I remember,
because they don't know that. They don't know they're getting played.
Was renegotiation of the trade laws to favor them a little bit more.
Like tax tariffs or something?
Yeah, they have problems with the tariffs that are levied against them. How expensive is the
war, though? With all these droids and stuff.
Funnily enough, actually, a lot of the Star Wars Legends, so it's all Apocrypha now, but a lot of it went over that building a droid, especially a B-2 battle droid, which is the ones that we see, the dumb-looking ones with the heads, right? They're really cheap to manufacture.
Okay.
They seem powerful
against everyone except Jedi.
Yeah. Yeah,
and Jedi, they are not even
as we
close
see
to
later. Once we develop clones and Attack of the Clones happens, they're really weak against the clones too. They're not smart because they have to be controlled from a big space station that broadcasts some sort of network to all of them.
They're like radio-controlled cars, but they don't have that hey, as soon as you lose connection with your controller,
No, they have that. Do you not remember the climax of the film where Anakin blows it up and it just shuts them all down?
Yeah, they do. And that's become troped.
Yeah.
Like in the Avengers film, that's just called they got Phantom Menace, where all the Shatari just go.
Yep.
And they're dead.
Yep. So Jar Jar is dumb still. He's just as bad as I remember him.
Is he a black stereotype?
I'm not so sure.
Racist in that?
I don't think it's racism. A lot of the Star Wars characters, like the alien races, are shorthanded to cultures that we can apply on Earth. Like the Toydarians, the Toydarians are just Jews. I get to say that I'm quite Jewish, and I think the Toydarians are quite funny.
No. That's the junk dealer. He's what is he?
Toydarian. He's a Toydarian.
Well, no. I meant the race on Earth. Is he?
Well, he's a Jew or a gypsy. He's a Jew or a gypsy. Yeah. He's a shifty salesman, and the big thing is that Jedi mind tricks don't work on them.
It's accents.
So immediately after they meet Jar Jar, right, they decide to go down to the Gungans' home planet, or home city, basically, and they slip rebreathers into their mouths, and I know that it's explained later, but we never get like the Jedi just kind of carry tool belts.
Right, because I brought that up, like, what's their arsenal? They always carry their lightsaber on them. Do they carry some money on them? What do they carry on them?
It's covered in the Clone Wars CGI series a little bit. The Jedi just have kind of like a utility belt that they carry on them most of the time that has just stuff in it that's very Batman-esque.
I was going to bring up Batman. That's
where they carry just a lot of like stuff that could be useful.
That feels borderline retroactive continuity, where that's just used to explain something. It wasn't. It was just like it's there for
Perhaps
the scene.
It was, but it's continuity at this point.
That's fine. That's fair.
It gets explained later, but that's still it would have been nice to have maybe like a better shot of them outside of their robes so we can see them putting on the tool belt.
They don't use it in the smoke scene in the tea room.
That's
they
true.
just hold their breaths. They don't go, ooh, let's grab the rebreathers. Would that not work?
I remember reading in the Star Wars like movie breakdown book. I had one of those like text
movie
books.
Breakdown books, or
there's
just
like one of those big text books that had like pictures of the characters with all their equipment and stuff like that. Like God, I can't remember. I was like 10 at the time.
Oh,
but
it wasn't like one of the like where it's like big diagrams and stuff.
Yep.
Like they did those for like every film.
Yep.
They've done it like for ships like the Titanic, where you see like all the whole. Oh,
yeah, it was one of those, but it was for the
How
Star
Does
Wars
It
films.
Work or something.
And according, I believe, to George Lucas, the rebreathers work by reoxygenating, like pulling air out of water, so they only work underwater.
Because it's dissolved oxygen is in the water.
Yeah, it pulls the oxygen out of the water. Which, I mean...
Or does it pull the oxygen out of the CO2 that you breathe out?
Something like that.
Because that could work too.
Yep.
In fact, that would work in more situations.
The thing is that there's no indication of when Padme Amidala swaps with her handmaiden.
I think it's meant to be a reveal later.
And I get that it's meant to be a reveal, but a little bit of a twist implication early on here would have been a little bit nice.
Because it's her as the queen.
Really early on, and then she swaps.
In the throne room scene, and
we
the
never
next
get a
time
scene with her without the makeup.
We see it's the problem. I think also is I can't keep the actors straight. The two of those ladies.
They look very similar.
Do we even see them? Like, do we get like a profile shot? Not profile, but like face to like. Where we see both of their faces next to each other. I
don't believe so.
That would be nice because then I could tell. I could really tell who these two are.
Yep. So eventually they escape the planet. We get a little bit of a scene with R2-D2, who fixes the shield generator, and the ship only gets shot like twice after that. But we get to Tatooine.
Did we care anything about any of the Gungan stuff, or is that literally just? Is it plot versus story, where it just moves us to the next scene?
It does.
How much does it matter?
Next scene. It's mostly there, I think, to foreshadow the Gungans joining in on the conflict at the end.
Oh, that's true. I mean, we basically just pick up Jar Jar Binks, but otherwise, like...
There's not a lot that goes on there. The CGI looks... The green screen effects look visibly bad.
When we can see the live action people on the green screen, it looks bad. When we're just looking at the CGI,
or doing wide shots, it looks great. It's
from behind is better.
Yep.
Because I just said the texture mapping was just under par.
Yeah, they had a little bit of trouble with that. It looks like.
No, I bet that was the best they could do for the time.
That's true.
At the
this
time,
is what
1999. This is just the disc we have is the 2001 DVD release.
Okay.
But it was originally... This was in 98. This was in 98 when they were probably like doing post-production because it released... What did it release? May of 99 or December of 99?
Something like that. I was
like
a
12.
child.
I went to the theater.
I was like 5.
I went to a theater that's no longer here anymore. Let's put it that way.
I don't get to say, I remember going to see the Star Wars films.
I do.
Because the only one that I went to see in theaters was Episode 3.
That's it?
Yeah,
that was a thing me and Dad did. We went and saw them.
Granted, I did watch all of them with my dad before we went to go see Episode 3.
So, that's what I actually want to mention.
So I do have a lot of fond memories of that.
I was considering just going right into Phantom Menace without having seen 4, 5, 6, but we borrowed the VHSs and we got them in.
So we get to Tatooine.
Yeah,
all right?
Tatooine.
And Qui-Gon, Jar Jar Binks, and R2-D2 try to head out into the city. I believe it's Mos Eisley, but it might not be. It's just a city on Tatooine. And the security officer comes over and says, "Nope, the Queen says you need to take the handmaiden with you, who is at this point Natalie Portman. It's actually the Queen. She wants to see what the planet is like."
Does this end up having any point?
Mostly, it's just to set up Anakin's weird fascination with Natalie Portman.
Oh, which you brought this up.
Go ahead,
go for it.
So Natalie Portman walks into the shop with Watto and Anakin just starts spitting game at her like immediately, right? Like his opening line to her, the first words he says in the film to Natalie Portman are you an angel?" Right?
Yeah.
And he lays it on thick for that whole scene. Like, look, I've never seen a child that fly. Like, those are the kind of lines that I might use, and that's just uncomfortable, frankly.
I mean, his just dialogue in general, just
yes, his dialogue is
cringe because it's just
it's cringe. It's definitely not good dialogue. There's just something stilted about the actor that they get to play Anakin as a kid.
He's 10 at the time, I think, right?
Yeah.
Jake Lloyd
comes off as a little too young than what they were going for, I think, as well.
What about like a 12-year-old? Like, would that have been a better way to go? A little bit more,
make
or just
13, 14 would probably be better because that would explain why he's spitting game at this
Luke, right post puberty,
just post puberty.
Because 19 is where we meet Luke, and Luke is
young really looking.
He isn't looking for the ladies. He just wants out of his parents' basement. Basically, he just wants to get out from his parents' thumb. He wants to just party up with his friends and go off to piloting school.
Yep.
He wants to go to school, basically.
Yes. Yeah. He wants to go to college.
Anakin doesn't get those choices. He is a slave.
Yep.
Which was his mother a slave?
Yes, his mother Shmi Skywalker.
She is a slave, but I meant like was she a slave and then had the kid, which we will get into in our second section, I'm sure.
I'm not actually sure. I don't remember a lot.
And then I'm just talking. So what I'm getting at here is just the technicalities and cultures of these places, because we're picking up on like Gungan culture with the whole life debt.
Yep.
The slavery with the Hutt controlled world, which is next door to the Naboo.
That's in pretty much every scene that the Hutts show up.
They hyperspace the Naboo
all over the place,
or they just like literally just kind of jaunt over to the same solar system.
They hyperspace to Tatooine from Naboo. Their hyperspace was leaking, which is why they only got to Tatooine.
Because they would have gone farther to a Republican-controlled world.
They would have just gone to Coruscant and gotten their stuff.
Are we going to go back to our protagonist? Because speaking about Republican credits...
Yes. Qui-Gon Jinn approaches Watto, the Toydarian merchant who's running this little backwater ship junkyard, basically, and is like, "Hey, I'll give you 20,000 Republic credits for your new hyperdrive." And Watto turns to him and goes, "Nope. I need something a little bit more physical. Your money actually isn't worth a lot out here on the Outer Rim."
This would be like in America trying to use any other currency without going to a bank to exchange it.
Yeah, like it'd be like trying to buy
other
something
than a
with
US dollar.
pesos.
Nobody's going to accept that money.
Yep.
I mean, this is space, and this especially in like this is the Outer Rim territories, so it's a little bit more looser. Like, it sounds like there's multiple currencies that'll be legal, but like Republicans, pound for pound, the credits just aren't worth it.
Yeah, Republic credits are
so Watto refuses his form of money.
And Qui-Gon has the balls to try to mind trick him, 2 or 3 times?
2 times.
2 times he tries to mind trick Watto.
I mean, he steals and trashes a ship, which we haven't watched the lead scenes yet, but that ship gets trashed. We never see him go back to it, but it goes over a waterfall. He he convinces them to like, "Hey, give us a ship." The Gungans, and then he trashes it, and then he rolls up on this guy, and he's like, "I want your parts, but I want to give you money that's not any good for it." Yeah, you're gonna take it. So he's just stealing more stuff.
Yeah, Qui-Gon Jinn's a little bit like Liam Neeson plays Qui-Gon Jinn very loose for a Jedi.
He's got
I like it personally. I think it's a very interesting idea.
Qui-Gon Jinn's one of my favorite Jedi. I just love that he's not a by the book kind of Jedi. He's
doing it his own way.
He's feeling it out. I mean, honestly, so he's the mentor role here. That's what we've got.
Yes. Yep.
But that's probably not the good type of mentor to have. Is to be the loose guy.
Obi-Wan Kenobi is not getting taught the things he might need to get taught.
It's funny because Obi-Wan is so much more the by the book kind of guy.
He is.
he feels more like the mentor. Was like, yes, this was,
yes, Anakin, absolutely, we have to go here. I'm sorry.
Do this the way by the code here. And Qui-Gon's like, it's all good, man. Yeah. We're just gonna go do this stuff. And it's like, wow, shady much.
Yeah, a little bit. So that's about where we left off. Was they just finished eating dinner, and we got to explain how they keep slaves under control.
Oh, jeez.
By implanting bomb collars into them.
Basically.
So
it's basically Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Stone! We're gonna put bombs in the neck.
It is interesting to think that there is some value to slaves, because the Doug only spares Anakin. During that fight with
no, the Doug,
Jar Jar.
Is that the race that
Sebulba belongs to? The Doug only spares him because killing a slave he'd have to pay for Anakin.
Property. It's the same rules of slavery we had, where you have to. You're damaging people's property. You have to pay the fine or replace it. These people are property. That's the neck of the woods we're in right now.
Yep.
We didn't even get into droids' property, but
so that was the scene we left off in, right?
No. There's one last bit, and then we'll head back out. It is, we have now established that we are going to get this part to fix this thing. He's going to pod race for it.
He has to pod race for it.
And that's what we're headed up into now. We're gonna.
So I think we stopped pretty much at the end of Act 1 for the movie, right? We've set up what the next chunk of the film is going to be. Pod racing. And the gambling that goes along with it. Speaking of which, up next, we get to see Liam Neeson play dice and cheat.
That man...
We get to see Liam Neeson cheat at dice.
He has such questionable morals. Gosh.
All right. Well, we'll be headed out. We'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so we're back. And we just watched Qui-Gon Jinn make the deal with Watto. We watched him cheat at dice. That was pretty funny.
Oh, he does so much fucking shady shit.
Yeah, he changes the bet that he makes with Watto right at the start of the race.
Does he change it, or
he adds a new bet? Basically.
See, if I recall, it doesn't alter that bet. What it does is it makes a simultaneous bet.
Yeah,
a second bet. Like, one of them is Anakin has to win, and one of them is Sebulba has to not place first. Something like that, where basically if Anakin does win, both bets go into effect.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So, Jar Jar is dumb again during the entire scene where Anakin is fixing the pod.
He's comic relief, clearly.
Yeah,
he's forced humor.
Comic relief. I don't think we needed the pod fixing scene. Actually, I don't think anything plot related gets done during that scene.
I think literally at the end. See, this is a case of if it was a different movie where pod racing was the climax, like the final third act, and it was all about getting, working to get that pod racing fixed, then that would make a lot of, weight with him being like, yes, I finally did it. But it was just like, yeah, I got the pod racer basically fixed or whatever. Like, that's all sort of just like, it can happen off screen. It's one of those things that can happen off screen.
Yep, it is, absolutely. We see the first look at Darth Maul's Starfighter, which has a lot of the design sort of specifications that the other Sinar Fleet Systems ships hold. I'm not sure if it's a Sinar Fleet ship. Okay, so
I was saying, yeah,
I can see you're confused.
I'm making the face of what technical stuff that you just
TIE fighters in episode 4, 5, 6 are all built by the same company, Sinar Fleet Systems. They're all built and designed by the same company. All right, their prototype, the TIE, the TIE Inquisitor shuttle, right? The from the animated series Clone Wars, not Clone Wars, Rebels, right? The one that has the wings that fold inwards and fold out.
Is it
It's the Inquisitor's TIE Fighter.
The Inquisitors, yeah. Where it's
I'll
like this.
Put a picture up.
It's like this, and then when it lands out, it comes out like that. They come out.
No, that's the shuttle. That's
the shuttle is the one I'm thinking about.
I'm referring to the actual the Sinar Fleet's prototype TIE Fighter.
when
that
will
we see in Rebels. We'll see it in Rebels.
Oh, okay.
When we get there. But this has a lot of the same
I've seen Rebels.
profile. So that's a little bit interesting. I'd have to look up the actual model for it and check. But it does show that George Lucas has at least a consistent design style in a lot of his things.
This is... So, to me, this is a slightly interesting and mostly uninteresting, just because it's one of those more things where you have...
It's one of those little things.
It's background
that
details.
Like, yeah.
It's background details. Like, there was two things that I had seen in here that I'd never seen anywhere else. There's, like, almost a, like, kind of... Imagine a BB-8 droid, but instead of his headpiece, it looks like, your sort of classic lamp shape.
I'll find it.
Like Pixar lamp shape. And then earlier you see these, like, little short people that look kind of like the depressed robot from... Marvin from the Hitchhiker's Guide
to the Galaxy.
But they do also kind of have the lamp shape, and they show up earlier in that first act.
We get to hear some
details.
Great slang. A little boy walks up to Anakin and he goes, "This is so wizard,
Annie!" But he doesn't say it like that. He goes, "This is so wizard, Annie." It's such a deadpan. We both laughed. It was.
I believe we both picked up our notepads and started writing the minute the line came out of the kid's mouth.
So wizard.
And then we moved directly into what personally is my second favorite part of this entire movie, the pod racing scene. I really like this scene, actually.
It's practically an act. It's not even a scene.
Yeah. It's
all
it's
one
like
scene.
a 10-minute or 15-minute race.
It's a single scene, isn't it? It's not really broken up, is it?
Nope.
I mean...
We
never cut from
between.
it. Do we cut from it?
Yeah, we do. We cut from it to Jabba the Hutt and to the reactions of the people.
We get crowd reactions. We never cut to anything
any
else.
other planet.
And when you spend... I think I clocked it at 20 or 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, what are our villains doing? Which supposedly are the Nemodians. Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna look. You're gonna say it right, or you're not gonna say it at all. Nemodians, I believe. But Warwick Davis shows up in the crowd in this scene.
Right.
That's pretty
he
good.
gets actually a lot of like that because normally the cuts the shot shots of the crowd are pretty like quick. They're like 3 seconds.
Yeah, they're 3 seconds.
3 seconds. His shots are like 7 seconds. You sit in that for a little bit so that you see that it's Warwick Davis hanging out with Watto.
What was interesting is that right before the race starts, there's a big group of people who walk out with flags, and you get to see them walk all the way across the race
They never
line.
establish like who.
They don't establish whose flags they are. I don't know who they are. You know, I don't recognize any of the symbols on them. Although, granted, that's because they flash across the screen real fast.
Force Awakens has a bunch of flags on that like outpost.
Yep.
It might just be like I want to call them like colonies or something. You know, they're just like.
Yeah. Yep. The pod racing scenes are all fantastic. They aren't really worth going over because there's not a lot of plot that happens. This is the climactic.
It's an action scene. It's like
well cut.
It's like I saw he was swiping the laser sword this way, and then he went in for a move like this. That was pretty sweet. And then he just it's basically like describing an action scene, which
we will do when we get to episode 4, 5, and 6 because the action scenes in those actually have a lot of like stuff to go over, right? Specifically, episode 5 has a fight scene between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader that actually you can go through and you can break down and be like, okay, this is interesting cinematically. Pod racing is just fun action, pretty much. Although, interestingly enough, Qui-Gon sort of gives Anakin a little bit of advice right at the start, and you hear the Force theme start. He's like, trust your instincts, Anakin. Feel, don't think.
How much have we spoken about the music yet?
And then you hear the Force theme.
The music in this is great.
It's Star Wars. I wouldn't say it's great. It's just as good as the music.
It's exciting.
Yes, it's just as good as the music in episode 4 and 5 and
It's
6
noticeable. And it gets its tone well. Yes. It gets you pumped up for all the scenes. Like
I will say, I think 3, 4, 5, and 6 all do it better. I think Rogue One does it a little better as well.
3, 4, 5, 6?
Yes, I think 3 has a really, really fantastic score. The Battle on Mustafar. When we get to it, I'll actually point it aside and I'll point it out. But the Battle on Mustafar is a really, really great soundtrack orchestra going on in the background of it that really sells it to me.
When we're on the audio part of this, the Foley artists
Oh yeah.
The sounds of the pod races, and then just not even just them, but also the editors, the mixers, who just like it's only taking up this much part of the backing sound because you're hearing the music mixed in with all these little sounds and stuff. Mm-hmm. Then it just like takes over the soundtrack for a moment, and there's just like the and it's oh, you're there. You feel like you're there. It's so great.
The Foley artists really do a good job here.
Not just the Foley artists making up those sounds,
but the editors.
Oh, the mixers, the people who are mixing in those sounds. Which it's the audio editors, not because when I think of an editor, I think of just the guy who's putting the visuals together.
Yep. We finally get back to Coruscant. Okay. Anakin has to leave his mom behind on the planet because Qui-Gon could only bet for one of them. So they make their way to Coruscant, where they meet with our overarching villain of the series, Senator Palpatine, who at this point is Senator. He's not Chancellor yet.
Senator from Naboo.
From Naboo, yep.
He is, which we still haven't. He's directing. He's directing the attack on his own planet, but like
we don't learn that until movie 2 or 3. Really?
Do they not make that reveal?
No. It's revealed when they reveal that
right at
he
the
is
end of this movie.
When they reveal that he's Sidious, then you know. Then it all fits together basically. But as it stands, he just seems like a man concerned with his home planet. And he advises Amidala to call for a vote of no confidence against the current chancellor.
It's an impeachment.
Yes, it's an impeachment, basically.
Hey,
you're not doing your job right. We need a better chancellor.
I think they kick him out by the end of this. We'll see.
Yes.
And it's then Jar Jar pushes in
Chancellor Palpatine
to push Palpatine into that new vacuum because there's a lot of systems being represented. There was probably like 100 to 200 like Senator chairs.
Minimum, yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't just by chairs. I just mean like a symbolic chair, not the physical chairs. But yeah. There's a lot of seats of power.
There is. It's a big galaxy, and they do a good job of getting you a sense of scale in that scene. The CGI isn't the greatest, but it isn't as noticeable in this because it's mostly just wide shots. There's not a lot of real close-up scenes. It's hard to notice. I don't think I have a lot of CGI
problems with the pod racing scene. Like, it just kind of fades in.
You're good. The pod racing scene moves a little too fast.
It only looks bad when you cut back to the people standing in the pod, like Qui-Gon and them, and they're just in their little tiny set, and then everything around them is fake. And that's the problem we had with like the scene with the Gungans and stuff. It's just whenever we just look at people on a green screen set, it looks bad. And if you follow their eye line, like in that Gungan scene when they first show up at the Gungan city, they're just kind of, because obviously those creatures weren't actually there. So it's sometimes it's when you start paying attention to the details, and you've seen this a few times, it's hard. It's hard to watch that kind of stuff.
It is. It really is.
What else did we?
I think that's about it. Actually, this was by far a significantly less plot-heavy chunk of time. We get a little bit more about Anakin being the chosen one, basically. We get a first mention of the prophecy.
We actually get to meet the Council of Jedi here.
Yep. Who Yoda is looking a little stiff these days.
I said he just needs more motion around his eye sockets, like the eyebrows.
Yeah. This Yoda is still a puppet. So this Yoda is not CGI yet, and so I think it's mostly due to the lighting, because the lighting on Dagobah at least is kinder to puppets because it's such a dark set on Dagobah.
It's like when we see the CGI giant fish in the ocean.
Yeah. The environment makes it much easier to tolerate.
It's the Jurassic Park effect, where you see the T-Rex in the rain at night, and it looks great.
It looks great.
Like those
fish
looked great. The giant fish, and then like the serpent fish.
Yeah. Looked just fine.
They looked great, but like Jar Jar sitting next to our people, no.
Suffice to say, a bright, backlit, sunny room is really bad for Yoda's puppet. It is very clearly a puppet, and it's hard to get. It's not hard to get over that, but it is quite obvious. It's very I call it very like never-ending story puppetry work, right? Where it's like you can tell, but you're willing to put it aside, and just be like, yep, that's a puppet dragon, but that's just fine for me.
Oh, we should briefly mention again with the pod racing. Character design and like technical design,
was
how
fantastic,
how they designed the pods, and they all look different, and all these races look different. Like the artist
the thing that originally drew me to Star Wars is that the world building is just so interesting. There's just so much cool stuff in the background. So yeah, it was. I gotta say they do a really great job with the pods.
Yeah.
Yep. So moving on. I think we're going to head back out and finish up the film. We'll be back to convene after we've finished Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And we're back now. We just finished up the movie, as well as watching the majority of the deleted scenes, except for the ones that dealt with the pod race. So, what do you think of the movie overall, Joe?
Just I wanted to get right into the lead scenes, but let's
we gotta finish the movie first.
The movie, yeah. Gosh, let's talk about our villains. Let's
actually let's go in chronological order, and we'll start with midi-chlorians because that's the scene we left off on. Is the scene where Anakin Skywalker asks Qui-Gon Jinn what midi-chlorians are.
We didn't. We didn't really talk about the Jedi not wanting to train him because that's right at the tail end of where we left. So we didn't talk about it because they didn't really finish that scene. Yeah. So we should probably talk about that, and then the whole midi-chlorians working into that, the Jedi in there. Go ahead.
Okay. So basically, Anakin Skywalker has all these midi-chlorians in his bloodstream, which just means his power levels are off the charts. He's over 9,000, and
over 20,000.
Over 20,000 midi-chlorians, right? And this is a bit of a controversial idea because it changes the way the Force works a little bit. In the original trilogy, the Force was this unknowable power that just existed in the universe that tied everything together. And by attaching that to an object, you sort of cheapen the philosophy that gets bandied about. It becomes
less mystical.
Yeah,
it's less space wizards.
Yes, it's less space wizards, more magic bullshit. Not magic bullshit,
Let me see,
but
what's our
more
phrase?
sufficiently advanced science,
This
and that's
is
not
so
as
wizard,
good.
Annie.
Yeah.
There's so many quotable lines from this,
So,
especially in this back half.
Joe brought up the idea that this movie's called The Phantom Menace because there isn't a clear villain. And I actually kind of agree. I do agree.
There's no clear villain.
Darth Maul doesn't show up enough to be a villain.
The pod racing is a good example of our villain has no stake. There's an antagonist, but it's a different one. It's Sebulba is the antagonist for that section of the film. Maybe it's a rotating cast of villains.
Yeah.
There is no one clear antagonist. Maybe Qui-Gon Jinn's the antagonist.
You're wrong.
You're
objectively wrong. Qui-Gon Jinn is a great man, and I will not have him slandered.
I thoroughly enjoy Qui-Gon Jinn.
So as we return to Naboo, we realize we have no real connection there, right? Everybody we like is off-world.
This is when I posted, I go, this is the question I asked when we got back to Naboo, and they're going off on their saving the end of the world mission. I go, why do I care? Because, like you said, everyone we had just came back to Naboo. Everybody was safely on Coruscant. Well, I mean, as we'll see in the second one,
safely,
you get assassins
to a certain degree of safe on Coruscant.
But the point was they weren't on Naboo where the war was happening.
Yep.
I mean, they don't endear us to the people because we don't spend a lot of time interacting with people. We see a few minor characters like the one guy who keeps sending her holograms, and I don't know. It's just
hitting the table. You're going to give the mic feedback, but you're right. Absolutely. So the major climax of the movie can be broken down into three parts: the Gungan fight, Padme's attempts to capture the Viceroy, and the fight with Darth Maul. And of these, and also Anakin Skywalker up in space being an idiot. And of these, only two of them are actually all that good sequences.
It's not.
Padme's fight's decent. Padme's sequence is interesting, at least. And the Darth Maul fight is great. Jar Jar Binks is just played for laughs the entire time, which kind of cheapens the effect of the battle. And it sort of hurts the message, not the message, but the tone that they're going for there, you know?
Other than being an envoy for Gungan, what is he there for?
Nothing.
He's comic relief, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know what he does? He takes away more time from R2-D2, because R2-D2 has been more comic relief in the past. And Anthony Daniels' C-3PO, which he makes appearances in this film, but isn't... You know what? Yeah, he is kind of played for laugh. When they're talking about, oh, you got naked plates and all that stuff, like, there's a little bit of comic relief with our two robot characters who have been comic reliefs in the movies past.
Yep. And so it hurts the climax of the film because there's too much going on. You know? Maybe cut some of Anakin's stuff. You don't need to focus nearly as much time on his space adventure. Because he's had his climax, right? He had his big sequence during the pod racing. You know, you can actually have him sit out the climax, and that's fine.
You could.
I don't know. You would not lose a lot.
What do you
because
do?
you just have the Naboos, the Nabooian.
No, you don't have the Gungans at all. You just have the I get the note.
It's
here.
just Padme, and it's
the Nubians is the Naboo people, the Nubians, and you get rid of the droid fight in the Windows background, which is I'm gonna give you credit for that one. Where I'm like, grass is a practical effect here. Look at it. That's real grass.
It is.
That's so funny in a film like this. Yeah. No, so that fight gets cut out. And because if you cut out Anakin and destroying the droid army up in space, like their control tower, if you cut that out, then that means the droids are never dispowered, which that only matters in the Gungan fight. And if you also remove the Gungan fight, you don't care about them ever getting dispowered because they just win the battle and take over the Neimoidians. Yeah. They capture them, and the Neimoidians will be like, all right, stand down. Everybody stand down. You know? Yeah. So you don't need the fight.
Either of them. Yeah, you can cut out the two worst chunks of the climax and not lose a lot.
And you don't... Why would the Gungans agree to this, even? Or they'd be like, you know what? You guys are always thinking this elitist... You're always elitist trash, and you're like, we're lower than you. And now we're going to go be your cannon fodder for you. Remember in the planning sequence? You guys don't matter. We're just going to go be for the real battle. It's... Oh, God.
Yep.
It's...
Yep. I love the fight with Maul, by the way. It's one of the better fights in the series. I think it's better than a lot.
I like the level of aggression that Obi-Wan shows.
You see a lot of emotion in the swings, and it's one of the things that I love about the prequel trilogy is that as good as the fights in Episode 5 and 6 are, you don't get a lot of the choreography that conveys emotion. It's a lot of character acting in 5 and 6, whereas in this, it's all in the action, right? You see Obi-Wan putting all of his weight behind his strikes with that lightsaber, and you see Darth Maul spinning everywhere. So you get a lot more of the aggression going on in that fight. I like Liam Neeson plays Qui-Gon beautifully in that fight, by the way. He's sitting down to meditate during the sequence where all of the force fields are activated. Really conveys sort of if not a prescience...
it's the visual conveyance
between an awareness of what's going on, yeah.
Obi-Wan's like charged and ready to go. Maul is
pacing back and forth like he's a predator. Yeah.
And Qui-Gon's just like, hey, man.
Yeah, and Qui-Gon sits down to meditate.
So I'm going to pull us out of this discussion for just a sec to talk about the Queen reveal. Because
it's stupid.
It's about 15 to 20 minutes before the end of the film, we reveal that,
Padme Amidala is the queen. So
I think it's, now that I've watched this again, I see why it's in the film. Otherwise, I had no idea why it's here. It's here because then it allows her to be with Anakin because it means she was wealthy. Because otherwise, if she was the handmaiden servant, she's not wealthy, she's lower class, she doesn't have a lot of mobility, she can't go out, get in love with Anakin and move on and move places.
Yeah, move to Coruscant.
Right, but if she's the elected official for the time, then she's wealthy. But the problem is, if she's always the queen, her and Anakin are never going to interact. Because the Anakin never interacts really with the queen, except for like, hi queen, I want to talk to your handmaid. But the handmaidens are supposed to go out and deal with all this stuff, like deal with the dirty people. And so she was interacting with him. that's why it's there. It's literally
It's
to
to
set
develop
up
the romance
it's
subplot
it's to make the romance work for later. And that's why it's there. But it's in service of that, and I feel like they could have done maybe something different because except for being in service for the romance, it feels dumb. It feels dumb because even if there was that whole swippity swappity, if you just don't do it especially not during the discussion with the Gungans, you're going to ask them to try to give their lives so that you can take back your section of the planet, even though they did abandon their home place. So I assume the robots got there at some point. It's not made clear, and it's not very fair. So no, you want to talk a little bit more about the Maul. The Maul as a villain, because there's
Maul
like
as
4
villain,
or 5 villains in this.
See, the problem with Maul is that you have to wait for later on for him to get fleshed out really as a good villain, because he does eventually become a good villain.
He becomes a good villain after his life ends. Like literally, he's not interesting until after his death.
And then Clone Wars happens, and he comes back, and he's great in Clone Wars. In Rebels,
I was gonna say in Rebels, he's excellent,
very interesting as a character. But he has to get basically bitch slapped in this movie. He gets absolutely
so much
destroyed
more interesting
by
in
Obi-Wan.
Rebels. Yep. With his interaction, which we'll get to much later.
Once we get there, we're gonna do the.
We'll talk much more about Maul.
Over of the Rebels series.
Because he's kind of boring in this. He doesn't.
Well, he's just an intimidating villain, right? So
if we go Indiana Jones style, he's the muscle of the There's the main villain. There's the sub-villain, which if the main villain is the Sidious, the sub-villain are the Neimoidians, and then the hired muscle, that's Maul. Yeah. That's if you want to use Indiana Jones, since that's more George Lucas stuff, even though Spielberg's directing. George Lucas is a heavy consultant on that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's one of the things that really doesn't work as well in this film is that Maul is great whenever he's fighting, but we do not get anything but his fighting, and I think. To be fair, I think a lot of that's that he's played by was Ray Park, right? Who's
I said Ray
a
Park.
Stunt actor. He's not a character actor. You can't really rely on him to do the same sort of emotional stuff that
he's impressive physically.
Count Dooku. When Count Dooku shows up in the next movie and the movie after,
all his stunt stuff is done by somebody else because he's an old man. Mr.
No, he does a lot of his own stunts. Actually,
he can't do some of the jumping.
True, but the dueling in episode 2, I believe, is all Christopher.
I was going to call him Reeves, but that's incorrect.
No, it's not Christopher Reeves. It's
Lord
man. Christopher something or other. Because he is a lord. He's
been knighted. He's a sir.
Yeah, he's a sir. Yep. And he does an amazing job, and he does do a lot of the dueling himself because he's a trained fencer, and that helps sell a lot of his more action oriented scenes. But he actually is an actor. He's a good actor, so he gets to play to the camera a bit, and Maul's role gets replaced by General Grievous in the 3rd film. So it's one of those things that. You kind of have to deal with it, because I don't think they really knew how to deal with Maul, right? They had a really great concept, right? We'll have a Sith so strong, so good with his lightsaber that he gets a 2-on-1 fight. Christopher Lee. Yep.
Thank you,
Sir Christopher Lee. And
we want to talk about some deleted scenes here.
Actually, that's a good way to cap this out. Because immediately after the Maul fight, Qui-Gon dies. Qui-Gon dies and asks Obi-Wan Kenobi to train Anakin. And we immediately cut to the Naboo celebrating, as well as finally the funeral of Qui-Gon Jinn.
Right. I pointed this out.
We see Yoda and Mace Windu talking, and Mace Windu.
There's always true.
Yep. So that was a Sith. Well, which one was it?
And
there's
then
always
there's
a
a pan shot of 1, 2, 3, 4 characters, with the 4th one
is
being
Palpatine.
And
he is lingered on a little bit.
Not just that, they blur out everybody else insofar that they focusing. They focus on this guy, and to those of you who already know
the twist, it's Palpatine is Darth Sidious. And so they very clearly sort of foreshadow the big twist of Episode 3, And to a lesser extent.
You almost expect him to smile at the death of this Jedi, but he's not.
He's not. He's
would be a little
cool
too
as a cucumber.
It would be a little too revealing. I mean, this man's got this. This
is the long game he's playing.
Like
he's
this
been
next
at this
film
for
takes
decades.
place 10 years later.
Yep.
Like he's. Oh my goodness.
He's playing the long game, and beyond that, the only other plot relevant thing is that Yoda disapproves of Obi-Wan Kenobi training Anakin Skywalker. He worries that Anakin is too powerful, and there's some sort of darkness in him. But we don't see that in the film because the only scene that really shows it is cut. There's a scene where Anakin Skywalker gets into a fight with another child on Tatooine named Greedo.
It happens
a man
to
who
be
gets
the
shot.
Greedo from
Greedo
episode 4. But it could have been really anyone.
Yep.
That's just
it's
reference.
just a Rodian that calls him a cheater.
A child Rodian. It's another child.
A little boy Rodian who calls him a cheater, and Anakin beats him up. And Qui-Gon Jinn pulls him off and is like, well, what's going on here?
For a difference of opinion,
Yep.
It's like, did you cheat? No. Do you still believe he cheated? Asking the Rodian, Greedo. And
Greedo
he's
goes,
like,
yeah.
I do think he still cheated. And he's like, well, Anakin, you're just going to have to live with his difference of opinion.
Yeah. And so it's
not
it's
that you use violence to enforce your opinion on others.
And it's the only actual implication that there's some sort of darkness in Anakin that he uses Force to get his way, because every other character in the story is willing to just get down and give him a little bit of a scratch behind his balls.
Oh, who's a good boy? Or behind the ear. Who's a good boy?
Pat him on the head and be like, you're the nicest boy I've ever met. And it's honestly so full of pure shit, and it's
prior
great.
to seeing the episode 2 or 3, like, I was in Anakin's court, and I'm like, yeah, he's a sweet, because I hadn't seen the lead scenes or anything. Before episode 2 or 3 came out, it was just like, yeah, Anakin is the nicest kid. It's crazy to think that he's going to become as dark as he is, because they start him on such a point of light.
They do. And on one hand, that's good, but on the other hand, I like the Greedo scene because it does foreshadow a little bit of Anakin's own problems in episode 3.
Oh, I like just the one moment of it, but that's probably why they cut it from. And if we're talking about cutting from the film, this film is PG. Yes. And I mentioned that it's sort of like the newscaster shot where you never see him below the bust line. There's 2 laser stabbings and slicings that happen in the scene, the mall fight scene. And
neither of them are on camera.
You don't see them.
Yep.
Because it's only PG. I mean, when we get to our PG-13 film in episode 3, like,
everybody's getting hacked up.
So many limbs that are
and
come
General
out.
Grievous shows up, and General Grievous is like a horrifying monstrosity in and of himself.
Oh my goodness.
With his beating heart in his chest.
Arguably, the animated Clone Wars is where he makes his first appearance, and
I believe his first chronological canonical appearance is actually the CGI Clone Wars.
Because they made that later.
Takes place before the Clone Wars animated series chronologically.
I think it's the only thing that Star Wars has put out that I haven't watched.
It's fine. We're gonna
if we're not talking about holiday special or Caravan of Courage
you calm down. We don't talk about those here.
Oh, they.
All right. This is not on my good Christian podcast.
Non-canonical.
Not on my good Christian podcast.
But yeah.
So either way, all in all, I don't think this is as bad of a movie as everybody gives it shit for being. I think Anakin Skywalker. I think it's mostly the child actors that kind of ruin it.
Oh, what the phrase I used was it is stilted delivery, and what was the dialogue?
It's poor dialogue and stilted delivery.
Through stilted delivery. That's how I described it. And I mostly see it in the child actors, specifically.
And Natalie Portman is guilty of it occasionally as well, but part of that's that she's mostly interacting with
when she's the queen.
Yeah. Of the characters that we spend time with, Palpatine I think gives the best line delivery of them all.
Especially when he's Since it's technically
when
two
he's
separate
playing
characters.
Sidious, he's doing a really good job.
I was going to say while he's Sidious, but technically they're separate characters.
You get a lot of menace out of him, and he does a good job of that. Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor both also play great characters, and they do a good job of it.
There's good character actors that show up in the background. Frank Oz does a fine Yoda. You know what? The captain of the guard who watches over Padme who stays on the ship with Obi-Wan.
Panaka, I think.
Is that his name?
Yeah,
Panaka?
Captain Panaka.
He shows up in episode 2 too, but like, he says some quippy lines in there, but yeah.
Yep. Okay, well, I think that wraps up our first episode. Oh, no. What are we talking about, actually?
This is the final of... So, what I thought of the film.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
I kind of want to give it a little bit of a wrap here. So, since we broke it up into 3 45-minute sections, I'm going to say it, I was bored during the first 45. It's a lot to sit through, and then... Because they don't really start you on any... There is action near the beginning, but it's not pod racer. It's not pod racer level of excitement.
This movie starts off slow, and there's no denying that.
Because the other ones, like let's just talk.
Episode 4 opens.
Oh, shoot! There's
space battle going on. Darth Vader's murdering people.
Well, they're all like, "Oh, he's coming!" And they're just like, "Hey, we're going to a trade dispute. Here's our access codes. Oh yeah, come on in."
Even
and then
episode 7 starts faster than this does, actually. Because episode 7 opens on the murder of the town massacre.
Right. Most of these films open up on some big action set piece, which
helps to bring you in. It draws you in, and it helps you stay focused during all the slower scenes afterwards.
So, I have
there's the big space battle in episode 3. Have you?
And yes, I rewatched it recently, and the middle. If you break it up into 3 acts, it's that middle third. Oh boy, is it a drag out? Whereas in this one, it's mostly the pod race, and that's where I get invested in the film.
Once we get past the first 45 minutes, this film
picks up, and you're in.
You're good.
I mean, they dip into the political stuff, but it isn't all political stuff. You just come off the high of the pod racer, and you're willing to put up with some boardroom seatings. Yeah. I mean. We did break up the Coruscant scenes. We broke them up about in half because half ended up in our 2/3 and
half ended up in our 3/3.
And does it do a good job of setting up our character?
I think it does.
Other than you mentioned, it doesn't give him enough the yin and yang symbol. He's all white. He doesn't have that dark spot that you need. Yeah. Which you think that scene?
I think that scene with Greedo would have been a good job. I think maybe not having everybody around him being like Anakin's the nicest boy I know sort of stuff.
They're really polishing this stone to a shimmer white so that when it gets...
When episode 3 rolls around and he's murdering children, you're really like, oh wow, how did we get here?
We threw him for a full loop. It's, they do that in Dark Knight with like, oh, Harvey Dent, he's the brightest, he's the white knight. And then it's like, I'm just murdering people at random. And you're like, well,
That's sometimes the way the cookie crumbles, I guess.
You take the brightest hero and bring him all the way down.
Yep. So,
did you...
Like I said, I think this movie gets more of a bad rap than it needs to get. I think I liked it. I agree with you that the first chunk of it was a little slow.
Yeah.
Personally, I think a little less of the pod racing would have been good, actually. I think the pod racing scenes went on for a little bit long.
It's long. We didn't watch the lead scenes of it because
there were a couple of chunks right before the pod race that we don't need. You could have swapped out the scene where it's Jar Jar Binks doing comic relief while Anakin's fixing his pod racer up for the race with the Greedo fight. You could have swapped those 2 scenes out and lost nothing.
There's some exposition scenes where he's just comic reliefing around, like when they're sitting around the dinosaur table.
The dining room table.
The dining room table.
Yeah.
This could use... You know what? If this was like the 4th time they wrote the script, the 5th one would nail it. You know what I mean? Like one more pass through the script... And I think they would have had this.
Yeah, I do think that it's primarily a writing.
It's not like this next film we're gonna watch. That one.
That's true.
That one needs way more rewrite. Yeah. That needs a page 1 rewrite. Page 1 rewrite.
Attack of the Clones needs some actual work done to it to make it a really solid film.
It's funny that we would mention it like this. Maybe it's because this one has the least connection.
Yes, this is very standalone because ultimately this movie ends and we get a time skip of 10 years. So
where we almost are introduced to, except for Obi-Wan, it's based in I guess Padme Amidala, and then the minor characters Yoda. It's basically our main character who is Anakin Skywalker. Basically a different guy at this point. He isn't that sweet loving guy. He's in his teens,
and he's showing it.
Right, he's basically a different character. So yeah.
So we'll see you all again next week when we review Attack of the Clones.